Empire.
Welcome to Inside the Cap. I'm your host, Joel Corey. You can find me on Twitter at CoreyJoel. That is CorryJoel. Also, you can read my regular CBS Sports column, Agents Take. It's on salary cap and contract matters. This week, we're going to look at a couple of things. One, salary cap logistics at the start of the regular season, the TJ Watt situation, and Mark Andrews, Ravens tight end, signed a blockbuster deal yesterday, making one of the highest paid players at the tight end position. First up, salary cap logistics. At the start of the league year, which was March 17th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time this year, only top 51 salary cap numbers count during the offseason. This extends up until the start of the regular season. Midnight Eastern Time, Thursday, September 9th, everything starts counting. That means everyone on your roster, the 53-man roster, counts. Everyone who's on IR, everyone who's on the physically unable to perform list, people who are on a non-football injury illness list count, and everyone who's on your practice squad. Practice squad this year can be 16 players, and there are two tiers of salary. Players who have they can have unlimited accrued seasons and be on the practice squad. They're making $14,000 a week. Everybody else is at $9,200 per week. So if you have the maximum amount of practice squad, and practice squad players get paid over the course of the regular season, which is now 18 weeks, and they don't get playoff money, they get the regular salary. During the playoffs, if their team extends that far, practice squad salaries are no longer negotiable, at least this year. Sets these set amounts. So if you had the 10 players at the $9,200 per week, and then your 6 at $14,000 per week, and that was what your practice squad was for the year, that's going to take up $3.168 million of money. Now, when we talk about the switch from top 51 to everyone counting, it can be a $4 to $6 million swing, depending upon how your team is set up, how many people on PUP, IR, etc. That's why recently you've started to see teams do contract restructures in anticipation of the increased cap amount with the switch from top 51 to everyone. Now, the teams that are tightest against the cap are the ones who have to do the restructures. And one of the first ones we saw of note a couple of weeks ago was Ezekiel Elliott. Cowboys converted $8.6 million of his $9.6 million base salary into signing bonus. Cap number for 2021 goes from $13.7 to $6.82 million, and it increases his 2022 to 25 cap numbers by $1.72 million each. Now, Ezekiel Elliott did not have a great year last year. Didn't reach 1,000 yards for the first time when he's been healthy. Averaged like 66 rushing yards per game, when up until last year he'd been close to 100 yards per game. It's like 95, 96. Big drop off, ball security issues, had multiple fumbles. So he needs to bounce back. And if he doesn't, when you kick the can down the road, the consequences. So Dallas, if they release him next year in a conventional manner, $17.68 million in dead money, when before you'd have 10.8. So nominal savings if you do a conventional release, $540,000 versus 5.7 if you had not touched his contract. Now, obviously they could do a post-June 1 designation and split the cap hit into 2 years. It was $5.82 million of dead money and $11.86 million of dead money in 2023. And by dead money, most of you who would listen to something like this would know that's a salary cap charge for a player no longer on the roster. Now, teams have tried to make these restructures as easy as possible for them. And what they've done is they've built in, really in the last 10 years more so than anything else, a discretionary right to convert money in the signing bonus. And the reason teams have done that is before you'd have to go to before this right was built into contracts, you'd have to go to each individual agent when you wanted to restructure a contract and get them to agree to that. Now, when I was an agent, to me, you're asking me to do you a favor. And I'm generally wasn't in the business of doing favors, so I would want something. One, I'm not going to be any worse off than if I did nothing. And two, worst case scenario, if I am converting money, I want a lump sum payment now. I don't want this money to be paid like it is over the regular season. And I really wanted you to do a nominal raise for the trouble. Got cursed out by a cap guy once, who was someone I really respect and is one of the best in the business who's still working because of that. And now that's why teams got smart and started sticking this discretionary right to convert money to signing bonus. And basically what the provisions say is they just have to give, for the most part, written notice to the agent, and the conversion has to take place while you execute a new contract. And typically the money is paid like it would have been if you hadn't done a conversion in base salary. And if the player doesn't execute a new contract, then it's considered a material breach. Now, that only works, the clause works when you do a simple restructure. When you're going to start adding voiding dummy years in, like teams have had to do this year because the cap dropped $15.7 million from last year, then you actually have to go to the player, the agent, and have a negotiation, because you're principally changing the term as opposed to what is in this discretionary right provision. So when you add dummy years, you do have to actually start talking to the agent again. And we've seen the teams which are tightest against the cap make these restructures. The Colts did it with Ryan Kelly. Did a restructure as well, where they converted $9 million of his $10 million base salary and picked up $6.75 million of cap space. Raiders did it with Yannick Ngakoue, added 2 dummy voiding years to his, converted $10 million to pick up $8 million of cap space. The Buccaneers did the same with Mike Evans. Julio Jones, Titans today converted $14 million of his $15.3 million salary into signing bonus to get $11.2 million of space, added 2 voiding dummy years to the contract. Bears did it with Jimmy Graham, added 4 voiding dummy years, converted $5.825 million to get $4.66 million of space. Cowboys converted $6.25 million of DAC salaries, base salary, into signing bonus to get $5 million of space out of the deal. The Mike Evans case is interesting, not because of this particular restructure. And he's a case where they added, he was under contract through 2023, so they added 2 dummy voiding years, and they're picking up $8.94 million of space. What's interesting with Mike Evans is he's like their go-to restructure guy. He signed his contract in, I believe, March 2018 is when he got his extension. They did something unusual in 2019 I don't think I've ever seen before with these restructures. Into March, converted $3 million into signing bonus. Then, middle of June, converted $4 million into signing bonus. Then, right before the regular season started in September 2019, converted another $2 million. I've never seen a team do 3 separate restructures in the same year. That you can do. Now, if you have a negotiation where you have a salary increase, then there's generally a rule where there's a 1-year period before there's a renegotiation. Now, there's something called, you can do it, give a guy a raise if his aggregate cap numbers for the remaining years don't increase. So there's a work around that. But this Mike Evans thing, highly unusual in terms of what you see with the restructure. So you're going to see more restructures probably coming up until Thursday, and then maybe after Thursday as well when teams need cap room. But this is really the major time for when you see contract restructures. So Thursday, midnight Eastern time, top 51 expires, everything starts counting. So the cap charges for teams are going to increase, could be as much as 6-7 million with the change in the salary cap accounting, and that's why you see these restructures, which have been going on for the past 2 weeks and have picked up steam this week. TJ Watt and the Pittsburgh Steelers have still been unable to reach an agreement on a new contract. Watt is holding in. Instead of accruing a fine since he's on his fifth-year option, which would have been $40,000 per day, and forgivable since he's on his fifth-year option, as opposed to a veteran contract, and a fine of 1 week's salary for each preseason game, he's been holding in since the start of training camp, where he's selectively participating in practice, where he does individual work. He's in cardiovascular shape, not necessarily in football shape, not doing any team stuff. Dwayne Brown had been doing the same thing all of training camp. He returned to practice yesterday in Seattle. TJ Watt did not return to practice. Now, there are a couple obstacles to this deal besides the money. TJ Watt should become the highest paid defensive player in the NFL if a deal gets done, which I anticipate will be done before Sunday when the Steelers play the Bills. Now, Pittsburgh is one of these teams which, one, doesn't do deals early. By that I mean some teams will do deals 2 years before a contract's up. Steelers, for the most part, do it in their contract year. Ben Roethlisberger's first extension was done with 2 years. They really haven't done that since. When Antonio Brown was underpaid, when he had 3 years left wanting a new deal, they advanced money from future years. 2 years left, he wanted a new deal, advanced money from future years. Only when he reached his contract year did they give him a new deal. So that's kind of made it a compressed negotiation. But still, you've had all offseason to get this thing done. 2, Pittsburgh is in the dark ages in terms of contract structure. There are 3 teams which the only true guaranteed money in contracts is signing bonus. That's the Steelers, that's the Bengals, and that's the Packers. So what they do in lieu of base salary guarantees is they'll give you a roster bonus, March roster bonus, third or fifth day of the league year in years 2 and 3, if warranted, depending upon the size of the contract, to try to make up for the lack of guarantees. Doesn't necessarily work, because there was a case a couple of years ago. Nick Perry had a pretty substantial roster bonus, got cut, never saw that before the roster bonus was due. So you're still at more risk with this structure. Pittsburgh's made one exception. They gave Ben Roethlisberger injury guarantees. They've consistently done that with his extensions. Green Bay makes one exception to this. Aaron Rodgers, every extension he's had has had conventional salary guarantees. Other than that, these teams don't do that. Fortunately, Pittsburgh's not a major player in free agency. It probably cost them a player going this route. Green Bay, selective free agency, same with Cincinnati. They were able to get in Green Bay the Smith brothers a couple of years ago using this structure. This structure was a holdup with Le'Veon Bell when he was franchised the second time. He wanted a conventional structure and had a franchise tag of over $14 million. He didn't play under it. He sat out the whole year because he didn't want a conventionally Pittsburgh structured deal. Now, teams don't like to change their contract conventions or what they're accustomed to doing because they don't like setting a new precedent. So if I had $1 for every time I heard we can't do something because of a precedent, because every other player down the road is going to come and it opened the floodgates, I could have bought an NFL franchise by now. I never found it persuasive because teams should be able to distinguish between one situation from the other. The run-of-the-mill player, if they gave T.J. Watt a conventionally structured deal, should not have standing to come in and go do it for me, because T.J. Watt led the NFL in sacks last year, and a significant amount of people think he should have been Defensive Player of the Year, which went to Aaron Donald. So when you're talking Defensive Player of the Year caliber player, that could be your line of markation, or MVP caliber player on offense, or you're talking All-Pro player, something that could be where you would treat those players one way versus everybody else. Now, Pittsburgh probably has immediate concern about doing something structurally different for T.J. Watt. And that is Minka Fitzpatrick, who's been to 2 Pro Bowls, been to multiple Pro Bowls, so his 5th-year option is going to be his this year's franchise number for safeties. That'd be the one they'd have to be concerned about next year. If they do something for Watt, which deviates from what they're doing, Minka Fitzpatrick's going to go, hey, I'm in this category, you got to do it for me. So I understand, I don't agree with the whole blanket, we can't do something for precedent, but yeah, there's an immediate guy where it could impact Pittsburgh. Now, if I'm the agent and I have to deal with your structure, you're going to pay me a premium on the deal and the cash flow. Otherwise, we are not getting anything done. We are not doing the Joey Bosa cash flow. If I did a 5-year deal and you were going to do me like Joey Bosa, and Bosa is the standard for non-quarterbacks in terms of guarantees and fully guaranteed at signing. Bosa has $102 million overall guarantees, $78 million was fully guaranteed at signing. So basically the first 3 years of his deal, and then there's a guarantee in the year 4. So their first 4 years out of the 6 years is a 5-year extension, have guarantees. So Pittsburgh's not going to do, unless they deviate and make this change, he's not getting the Bosa structure. And if you're not going to give me the Bosa structure, and Bosa's at $27 million per year, then let's say if we're talking doing your type of structure, the Bosa structure, then yeah, maybe you could get me a $28.5 a year, and I'd take that structure. If you're not going to do that structure, I want 30, because I'm going to be more at risk, because you're not going to have my first 3 years fully guaranteed at signing. So if I got to assume the risk, you got to pay me more. Watt's supposed to play on a 5th-year option of $10.089 million. So one thing you'd have to do is give me the biggest signing bonus ever for a non-quarterback. Right now, that is Aaron Donald's $40 million. So you're not going to get any cap relief out of your 2021 if you're going to go with your structure. I'm not going to give any cap relief. I want a $45 million signing bonus. We can drop my base to $1.089 million, and cap number would stay the same. Yeah, obviously some of that's going to be deferred. I'm not going to get all of it now. But also, if we're doing your structure, which nobody else does but Green Bay and Cincinnati, then I want the cash flow, if we're talking 5-year deal, to be exaggerated. It's got to be quarterback type cash flow. And if you look at the best cash flow percentages on a 5-year deal, we're talking Derek Carr, Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford on their 5-year extensions. So then we're talking about through the first new year, I want like 37% of the money. Through the second new year, I want like 52% of the money. Through the third new year, I want like 67, 68%. Through the fourth new year, I'm going to want like 83%. Now, how these percentages stack up to Bosa? Bosa after the first new year is at 31.4%. After the second new year, 47.1%. After the third new year, 64.9%. Then 81.2% after the fourth new year. So you're going to have to exaggerate the cash flow as well. And if we're talking 150 million over 5 years, then through the first new year, I'm going to want 55.5 million or something in that of new money. Second new year, I'm going to want like 78. Third new year, I'm going to want like 100 million. So that means the first 3 new years are going to average like 33.3 million per year. Bosa's nowhere close to that on his $27 million per year deal. After the first 3 new years, he's at $29,213,332 per year. So it'd be dramatically more. Fourth new year, I want to be averaging 31 million per year. I want to be at like 123, 124. So Pittsburgh's going to have, if they want to preserve their precedence, to me, if you want a deal done, you're going to have to be accommodating in other areas to get this deal done. Now, what really gets interesting is if there isn't a deal done by Sunday, is TJ Watt going to sit out? Because they probably had the right to fine him because he is refusing to give his services by not playing, by not practicing fully, and setting himself up for conduct detrimental. And the way conduct detrimental now works with the progressive discipline, first time you discipline someone, it's 40% of the max. Second time is 7% of the max. Third time, 100% of the max. You can give warnings instead of fines, and if you gave 2 warnings, you could go immediately to 100% discipline. The max fine for conduct detrimental is 1 week's salary and or a 4-week suspension. And the suspensions are without pay. That's the max. So you could do something lower than that. And suspend him. If I'm the Steelers, TJ Watt don't want to play, I'm suspending him for conduct detrimental. And I'm going to suspend him each week he doesn't play, separate conduct detrimental offense. If you don't like it and wants to file a grievance, go ahead. That's your prerogative. But hopefully it doesn't get to that, and I expect the deal to get done by Sunday. And we'll see if he gets to $30 million per year. That's what I'd want if I had to stick to your structure, but I do anticipate he's going to be the highest paid. Final thing, we had one tight end yesterday, Dallas Goddard, who thought he would have a deal done by now. Negotiations have been tabled by the Eagles. Also thought Zach Ertz wouldn't be on the roster, but he now, at least publicly, is saying he wants to retire as an Eagle, and he's put everything in the past. Goddard, by not getting his deal done, actually now may be better off because Mark Andrews yesterday signed a 4-year extension for $56 million, averaging $14 million per year. Makes him the third highest paid tight end in NFL history. George Kittle's at $15 million. Travis Kelce's at $14.25 million. There's $37.583 million in guarantees, $30.083 million fully guaranteed at signing. The guarantees do not surprise me. Baltimore typically does strong guarantees. The only veteran quarterback or more veteran, should say tight end, of more fully guaranteed at signing is Jonnu Smith's $31.25 million. Actually, Kyle Pitts' rookie contract, which is a byproduct of his draft position, fourth, almost $33 million is fully guaranteed. That's the most for a tight end, but that's a whole different animal because it's slotted by his draft position. Overall guarantees, Andrews is second to Kittle's $40 million. And the reason I say the guarantees were expected because of what the Ravens did of Ronnie Stanley. Ronnie Stanley, most guarantees and most fully guaranteed at signing for an offensive lineman. Little over 65.5 million in overall guarantees and slightly under 59 in amount fully guaranteed at signing. Marlon Humphrey, second overall guarantees for a corner at just under 67, slightly under 40 fully guaranteed, makes him third at the cornerback position. As with Ronnie Stanley and Marlon Humphrey, the Ravens used the signing bonus option bonus structure, which is something they'd gotten away from and then brought it back last year. They did that with Joe Flacco, and that structure forced them to have to redo a deal after 3 years to use two option bonuses. And option bonuses are prorated like signing bonus. An option bonus is really a bonus in the second or third year to exercise a later year of the contract. And it's usually the last year of the contract. And in Andrew's case, there's a $15.5 million option bonus, which is going to get prorated 2022 through 2025. So the two sets of proration, the signing bonus proration and the option bonus proration. Now, back to Dallas Goddard. Goddard should reap the benefit of this deal. First thing is he's got to outperform Zach Ertz, but nonetheless, he's which hasn't happened yet in his 3 years when they're both healthy. But we saw Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry signed for $12.5 million per year in free agency to go to the Patriots. They've never put up monster tight end numbers. Goddard's been more productive than they've ever been. So that's his floor. He puts it all together. He could conceivably get more than Andrews, $14 million per year. I would think worst case scenario is he gets franchised next year. I've got the tight end number projecting to 5.253% of the cap. There's a salary cap ceiling of $208.2 million. At that ceiling, in this percentage, I've got the tight end franchise number at $10.936 million. Now, a bunch of tight ends coming down the road should benefit from this deal. Goddard, T.J. Hawkinson, who went to the Pro Bowl last year, comes to mind. The Lions tight end. Now, one guy who is extremely underpaid given the market, and this was a smart move by the Raiders 2 years ago when Darren Waller first started to emerge. Halfway through his breakout season, they did an extension with him where he was still an exclusive rights player, would have been a restricted free agent in 2020 and unrestricted free agent in 2021. They identified him as someone who could be a stud. And that's what he's become. Last year, 107 catches, 1,196 receiving yards, 9 receiving touchdowns. So he is an elite tight end. He gave up 3 unrestricted years, which average a little over $9 million per year. He's under contract through 2023. Waller turns 29 on Monday. So, we'll see if the Raiders eventually adjust this, but that was a smart move to identify him and be proactive. And that always goes back to what I've said and what I've noticed throughout my many years being involved in the NFL, that the longer you wait to sign a core player, the more it costs you. Raiders did a great job. Waller got him very cheap. Had they waited, let him get through the season, given it Austin Hooper, became the first tight end over $10 million per year, $10.5 million average on his free agency deal to go to the Browns from the Falcons. Waller would be over that had he played through the 2019 season and then gotten an RFA tender in 2020. I understand why he took the money, given where he was coming from, and Raiders, smart move. That's going to be it for this week's Inside the Cap. Don't forget, you can find me on Twitter at Corey Joel. That is CORRYJOEL. And also read my regular CBSSports.com column, Agents Take. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you back here next time. Goodbye.